of August 2024. Like I said, 14 days, exactly 14 years rather, since the 2010 Kenyan Constitution was officially promulgated. Now, before continuing, joining me this particular morning is Mr. Wilson Sosion, the former SG of the Kenya National Union of Teachers. Happy to see you again, Mr. Sosion. A very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to you and good morning to all our viewers, wherever they are in the Republic of Kenya.
Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you.
As well, joining me is Dr. Isaac Hassan. Daktari, very good morning.
Morning to you. Asante sana kwa kuwa na sisi. Of
course, Dr. Hassan is a leadership and governance expert. We'll be joined later on by Kasmal Makure, who's a revolutionary artist, to just take stock of what is happening across the country, and more so in the education sector. But before that, I just want us to look at what is making headlines in the local dailies and the stories that are making headlines as well, not only in the dailies but across the country as of today. And that is, of course, taking stock as well of what happened yesterday. And the big story of the day, to begin with you, Mr. Sosion, rather, is President William Ruto is set to officially launch the Raila Odinga's AUC chairmanship bid at State House Nairobi. This is a momentous occasion for the country because this is the second time that we are trying to send a Kenyan to the head of the commission, to be the head of the African Union Commission. From where you sit, is this a moment that we know will eventually lead to Raila Odinga, securing that particular seat, because he has sort of traversed the continent in, trying to seek support to solidify his base in terms of, voting and those who will back his bid. Do you feel is probably halfway there?
It's not halfway. He is actually 99%. Take it to the bank. The AU Commission chair come next year will be Raila Amolo Odinga. And the strategy of the President of the Republic of Kenya, unveiling him at State House, Nairobi, Kenya, and probably in the presence of East African leadership, is a strong message, not only to Africa but to the world, of confidence that the East African people have in the person of Raila Amolo Odinga. And you know, if you look at it, the AU chairmanship is rotational, and there is a general consensus by the presidents of the continent that this time round, the position should come to East Africa. It has been in the south, it has been in the northwest, but it has not come to East Africa. And if you look at East Africa, it is only fronting one candidate, that is Raila Odinga. The rest who are trying have withdrawn and rallied their support behind Raila Odinga. And that tells you that there is, of course, absolute total goodwill from many leaders across Africa. And of course, Africa needs an experienced old hand with tested capability to reform Africa in terms of unity, in terms of business integration, communication, and the general transformation, and making Africa a continental free trade area. Now, when you look at the goodwill of the president and the commitment of the government, it is at another level, because if it were ordinarily other political leaders, then, because of course, Raila and William Ruto on the ballot, and they battled for the presidency to the Supreme Court, it would be natural that William Ruto as the president would not have forwarded the name of Raila Odinga. But look, the scenario has changed, and you see, we are widening our political field as Kenyans, and the president is demonstrating the very absolute goodwill that is required. Is unveiling him at State House, and is doing it officially, and is doing it in public.
Fair enough.
He has done it over time, and I think this is a big win. And of course, Kenya must be rewarded. Okay. Our democratic journey has been one of the hardest, and Kenyans have sacrificed. The leaders of this country have sacrificed to promote democracy. And this is one way of demonstrating that we can live in tolerance and in divergence. And there are moments when we must agree together. And therefore, Kenya has the best opportunity to occupy that position and transform Africa. It will not be Raila Odinga as a person, but it will be the people of Kenya.
Of course, that is a story that is on the headline of the Standard, and they say moment of truth, and that as well is on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Dr. Hassan, the concerns for many Kenyans out there is not Odinga vying for that particular seat, because the youth opposed, rather opposing his candidature. But the key concern is the cost of the campaigns, because if we look at June 2017, when Ambassador Amina Mohamed was contesting for that particular seat, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had earmarked around 385 million Kenya shillings, but they ended up using around 437 million Kenya shillings. That is 52,000 in excess. So question is, at what cost? Because as things stand, we're talking about austerity measures. So the main concern for Kenyans is the cost of the campaign. What do you make of that?
Thank you very much. I think when you look at the perspective of why Kenya must bid for that position, it is essential for us, as being one of the countries within the Eastern Africa, which is known for, going ahead in terms of development, in terms of political development, in terms of democracy, in terms of other concept of governance, much better than all the other Eastern African countries. It is worth spending resources to secure such positions so that Kenya presence in the region is felt. But in terms of exchequer's money's utilization on a position that is purposely intended for an individual, it's quite questionable. I think as much as it is of value to the country, as much as it is important for us to hit the road in ensuring that Kenya secure that position, I think it is important for us also to think of how we spend our resources in terms of securing such position. But again, when you look at how intergovernmental positions operate, you will realize that the country that is trying to seek for that position must also contribute to the bidding process of that particular position, or to that particular candidate who is seeking for that position. On that note then, I think we have to abide by that and utilize resources from our exchequer's money so that we are able to secure the position. I think the concept of having that position in place and the goodies, or rather the things that Kenya will going to come with, surfaces more than the amount of money we will going to spend in terms of campaigning for that position. The only challenge is that if we don't make it to that position, of course, that is money that has gone to the drain. It is a loss to us. And it was a loss to us when we spent money in the last bid when we were seeking for the same position.
So 437 million down the drain.
Exactly. Now, there's an opportunity at the moment that we all see, which is that among the candidatures that have been trooped, probably our candidature looks more experience, as Mheshimiwa Sosion has put it, more experienced, more qualified. But again, we do not have much of the profile of other candidates, because they too have gone through the same journey. Other than age, I think in terms of governance and political arena, all of them played a similar role. The only thing is that, of course, as I earlier said, the democracy that Kenya has already reached is not comparable to those who are competing with Raila Amolo Odinga. And I tend to think the purpose of our president taking front line in campaigning for his candidate is that Kenya must be placed somewhere in the region so that we are able to voice ourselves more louder than even now when we are already being we are voiced actually better than all those African countries we are talking about. And quite a number of African countries are probably, well, will I say 80%? It's wrong to use statistics when your studies are not confirmed by figures, but almost 80% of African nations are far behind in terms of democracy, in terms of development, in terms of, you know, education sector, in terms of, you know, all the things that a country needs to have for it to be, you know, valued as proper governance in that institution. So therefore, I think it is worth campaigning for this. Okay, fair enough. On to another story, but still revolving around the Ruto-Raila deal, and Raila, of course, supporting William Ruto in informing of the formation of the broad-based government, to President William Ruto supporting Raila in his bid for the AUC chairmanship. Mr. Sosion, you've worked with both President William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. The Daily Nation talks about, you know, the Ruto-Raila deal signaling the return of ODM Pentagon, because if you remember, Pentagon had the likes of Ruto,
you know, the problem that we have in
Davadi.
Kenya is to reduce major political happenings to very petty level of conversations.
But you've just said major political
very
happenings.
Petty, very petty. Yes, it is major.
Yes.
It is major. And I think here, the vision that we have and the mind that we should carry ourselves is that of the continent of Africa. Let us not confine ourselves to Kenya. What is the big agenda of the people of Kenya in fronting a candidate for the continent? It is bigger than the political happenings. And let me tell you, for avoidance of doubt, and this is a fact, I've worked very closely with Raila Odinga and William Ruto very closely. And we worked with William Ruto in Rift Valley in 2007 to advance the presidency of Raila Odinga. And so basically all the key politicians in the country, one way or the other, they have worked together. That's a fact. It's not in doubt. And therefore, the political leaders in this country sitting around the table and agreeing is not a difficult thing. And that's the Kenyan spirit of unity. It's not a new thing. Kenyans are able to sit and work together. And if indeed the elevation of Raila Odinga to the continental position is going to lead to significant political alliance going into the future, then that is it. It will not be a surprise, because one thing leads to the other. And where people agree, then definitely they engage. And you know what? The fact is, Waswahili wanasema ukiona vielea vimeundwa. When you see the ODM party chairman has been appointed cabinet secretary, treasury, what does that send to you? When you see ODM deputy party leaders, Oparanya and Joho, those are not small politicians in this country, appointed to the cabinet. That sends a strong message. When you see ODM minority leader in the House, appointed CS Energy, that is a strong message. And I have been a devoted ODM member of parliament, even in the last, in the last parliament. And don't forget, don't forget.
Continue. Let me ask you. You've talked about, you know, key ODM leaders being appointed into the cabinet, and that's signaling something. But I just want to know from you, because the president calls it broad-based. Is that being broad? Is that a broad-based government? Because these are only members from ODM.
I will answer you.
Let me finish. And that, of course, also creates, you know, a scenario that is likely to come out in 2027 in terms of Raila Odinga supporting William Ruto. And if at all Raila Odinga succeeds in his bid to become the AUC chairperson, then it means he will not vie in 2027. And that could also possibly mean that UDA could work with, or President William Ruto rather, could work with the ODM in 2027.
Yes.
So looking forward to 2027.
Let me just conclude and then answer your question. Now, when you see that significant engagement, it is not just coming from the blues. There have been serious engagements, and the president has not he has not been hiding that. Then down to your question, why ODM alone? If other parties did not respond to the president's call for broad-based government, the president cannot prod them to the table.
Is it just about political parties?
Of course, it's about political parties. The frontier of engagement is political parties. We have seen Kalonzo Musyoka has continued to maintain his own position. And therefore, if you want to predict 2027, if you want to predict 2027, you can see the chemistry of ODM stronghold with the UDA stronghold getting closer and closer in terms of engagement. And that is not a surprise. It's not a crime.
Fair enough.
It is political rights of entities and institutions.
Fair enough.
And who tells you that in 2027, Kalonzo Musyoka may not be a very strong supporter of re-election of William Ruto? A lot of things will change.
Time will tell.
So let me
Time will tell.
Time is and the day in politics is a long time.
Dr. What do you make of that? Briefly.
I think Mheshimiwa Sosion has played politics there, which is very good. I mean, politicians always have to place themselves in the right political ground. But in terms of what you have asked, the issue of broad-based versus ODM, there is contentious point there. One, if we talk about broad-based, based on what broadness? Because we have seen individuals who are in political parties appointed into the government, but their party still remains opposition party. And that is why my brother Junaid is the leader of the minority in parliament. And therefore, if we connect between the political parties and the restructuring of the executive, I think from my side is just a discussion between Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and His Excellency Dr. William Ruto in terms of shaping the kind of executive they will want, to have to soften, or rather reduce the tension within the country, which has led to that particular move. But when we talk about tomorrow's political grouping, we have no actually proper vision in terms of saying ODM is likely to be with UDA or working with Kalonzo is likely to work with this, because the point is that when we get closer to the elections, what will come out very clearly is who is best placed in terms of joining who and forming alliances. And therefore, the alliance time is not yet. But one point that he has, Honorable Sosion mentioned, which I also agree with him, is the fact that if Raila Amolo Odinga gets the slot for AU Commission, then definitely Baba will going to play a very critical role in 2027 bid for the current system, basically the re-election of His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto into the office for his last term.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Before we go to the final thing that I want us to talk about this particular morning, it's not only on the local dailies. Joining us right now is Kasmuel Makore. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Happy to have you around.
Happy to have you, Milders. Sorry for my lateness. No, today is a big day for the Constitution.
Okay.
And there's a few arrangements we needed to make.
Okay.
So, and those needed to be made in daylight.
Okay.
So I was holed up until the sun showed up.
We'll talk about that. Just as you were, coming in, you were talking about the AUC bid for Raila Odinga, which is set to be launched today officially by President William Ruto, and is ODM lieutenants joining government, and you're talking about it really being. Does it really amount to it being a broad-based government and all that? I don't know what you make of that particular scenario from your perspective as a youth.
It puts us in as a young person in this country, puts me in a bit of a double bind. Because for one, as a patriot, I'm expected to support the bid of a statesman of the country.
Yes.
But also the general feeling of the youth and the unfolding of recent events. The tenor of the youthful population is that we were slighted, that we were betrayed. So you'll find that a lot of the youth currently do not support that bid. And that's why I'm saying it's a double bind, where on one side there's a part of the population that asks us to be patriotic and shelve our differences and be just come together for the sake of country. But then there's the reality of what has happened in the ground. The fact that the person who was the hope of the opposition has joined forces with the government. In fact, if he had delayed his meeting with Ruto even by a month, we would have a very different political dispensation in this country. And therefore, from where we stand, again, the placement of the day of the launch of the bid, it's Katiba Day today. Is the day our constitution celebrates its 14th birthday. And it is almost comical that the person who fought for the constitution is currently not in leadership. The person who opposed the constitution is currently the sitting president, and they are launching a bid of, it's a conflict of interest of sorts set on the date of the constitution. So
Okay.
I really, it's confusing, but also as young people in this country, we feel as though it could be better placed.
Okay, fair enough. Gentlemen, I just want to give each one of you a minute and a half or so to you know, I want to pick your minds on the proposal or directive by President William Ruto that, you know, he says NYS recruits should be taken through, you know, basic training in firearm handling. Sosyan, to begin with you, what do you make of that particular proposal? Because it has, you know, raised concerns among millions of Kenyans.
Of course, it remains an item of public discussion. That is a proposal by the president. And as a democratic country, various voices are welcome to make statements and comments on the same. And of course, any pronouncement by the president is a pronouncement. But I want to believe that the president has premised his proposition on very many reasons. And, you know, we don't need to be too mysterious as a country. The fact is, guns are all over. There are many people who are handling guns, whether they're trained or not. If you go to Northern Frontier, almost everybody has a gun and can use a gun. We have in the north and everywhere else. So when you are training the NYS recruits and you are giving them the paramilitary training, there would be nothing wrong with training them in how to use guns, because we've started a program of transiting the youth who graduate from NYS, not necessarily to other forms of occupations, but also to serve in the military and the police. So really, there is nothing mysterious about it. And we don't need to develop a lot of phobia and fear the guns.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
To me, it isn't anything.
Fair
because
enough.
if you give anybody who has never handled a gun to use a gun, they will still use a gun.
Now, fair enough. Coming to you, Dr. because I just want to sample some of the views or concerns by Kenyans across social media, especially on X, and just pick, for example, there's a person by the name Bravin Yuri says, defend the country, because President William Ruto said so that they can defend the country if the need arises. He says, defend the country as who and from who? We have KDF that defends the country. If they don't have numbers, recruit. Just creating a militia, if you want to train NYS on basic firearms, then all Kenyans need that training too. We are better placed to defend the nation as citizens. Now, Dr. Miguna says, now that William Ruto wants to use NYS to train militias and masked abductors, let's remind him that Moi introduced mandatory NYS training for the newly admitted university students in the mid-80s. We went there, marched, hardened, bonded, and prepared ourselves to confront Moi's police goons in Nairobi. Anguka Nai. What do you make of that? Because there's the concern of, okay, you train them on basic firearm handling, and then what happens if you cannot absorb all of them? What threat does it pose to the country?
First, the move in terms of adding more additional skills for the youth who have undergone paramilitary training is a critical thing. I mean, it was a wastage of resources to train people half-baked, and yet you have trained them as military, you know, you have given them all the drills required to be skilled in handling all other issues other than the firearms. And if the essence of firearm has come up, probably the purpose or the reason as to why the president say they may defend the country is maybe his thinking is that most of them have all the priority. They are prioritized to be absorbed in the uniformed forces. All of them, both the military, the forest rangers, KWF, National Police Service, all those ones will be absorbed there. And that's a route in terms of graduating from one level to another. And therefore, the youth are sure of their bet in terms of completing their course in NYS and securing a job. But utilization of firearm, as Mheshimiwa Sosion has put it, has nothing to do with training. Everybody can utilize arms or firearms so long as they get access to it. But I think the important thing for us is to have value for what you have been trained on. Number two is to make sure that if you have not been absorbed in the forces, then you have that discipline, instilling discipline in the youth as they migrate to their next career path. Fair I
enough,
think will be also essential.
Fair enough, Dr. Just in 45 seconds, kindly, because we want to take a break, Kasmul. Senator Richard Onyonka says, Mr. President, there's no reason why NYS there's a reason as to why NYS has never handled guns. Please find out why before you implement this. I know the law may not allow you to do this. If it comes to the Senate, I will stand against it. Mark you, the NIS advised against this particular move back in 2014. 45 seconds.
I'll read malice in the president's voice because the president is no ordinary citizen. We might want him to be an ordinary citizen, but he's not acting as an ordinary citizen, and his word has a lot of weight. So he needs to very carefully measure his opinion, just like the way the other day the Chief Justice was saying that she does not watch the news because the news are depressing. Those are people who should not hold certain views. But they need to give us, if they want the NYS to have firearm training, fair enough. But what is their absorption? Where are they going? Are they going to the army? Are they going to the police force? Because we have not seen clear structures of where these people are going to go. Again, we need to see from what is the highest composition of the NYS. Do they come from a particular community? Because we've seen rogue forces in police units. And we cannot allow more of those to continue because what is effectively creating is a militia because in terms of defense, we are not at war. Our borders are not at porous that the NYS will need to handle guns. Remember again, just so that I learn this, in terms of control, we have far too long treated the NYS as a dumping site. We have seen how these people, especially even in the police force, do not take care of their arms. If we have more people in the population, instead of rushing to give them guns, let's rush to give them the soft skills that will be required to ensure that those people are also part of the disciplined forces.
Of course. Thank you very much. That is Kasmo Makuru and the proposal by President William Ruto to, of course, ensure that NYS recruits are trained on basic firearm handling. That is a story that has elicited mixed reactions across the country. In this particular note, we just take a brief breather and we'll be back and talk about President William Ruto again and his government in terms of what is happening in the education sector. This is a sector that he promised to really focus on and ensure that it works. That will be after this break. Don't go away.